Hi, everybody. This is the holiday gift away Meet the Author opportunity. And we have 9 authors and 9 wonderful books that you have the possibility to win. And this is one of our authors, and her name is Karen Grunst. And I'm going to have her introduce herself. But before we get into that, the holiday gift away is starting right now, and you can get the book. You can enter right below us here in the comments and get all the information that you need. Of course, you may want to order Karen's book ahead of time and enter so that you can have one for yourself and one to give away. So with that, we'll get started with Karen. And Karen, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, and tell us what kind of book you write, what genre of book.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Marlene. So my name is Karen Grunst. I write out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I write Christian-themed fantasy novels that fan the fire of faith.
Oh, I love that. That's a great little motto there. That's a wonderful tagline. Tell me a little bit about the book that you have in the gift away. And if you have a copy of it, I'd love to see that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I have one right here. So the book is called Sacred Fire, and the main character is a 17-year-old girl at the start of the novel. This is the first book in the series. And she is supernaturally gifted as a peacemaker because she has the ability to sense other people's emotions. And she's always dreamed of living in the holy city that she can kind of see in the distance. And one day, this mysterious widow offers her a job there, and she's convinced it's the answer to her prayers. Of course, haven't we all been there? Then when she gets to the holy city, she finds out it's like not what she expected. It's teeming with ancient hatred. Some are directed at her. Wow. And even worse, somebody doesn't want a peacemaker in the holy city.
That sounds so fascinating. That's wonderful. I can't wait to read it myself. That's very cool. Who is your ideal reader for this book? Who would you say is your kind of your target audience?
Yeah, definitely female. It has a slow burn romance in it, which certainly attracts the female readers. And I would say, I do use a lot of Christian themes and imagery, and I find that the readers, I think, that really connect with the book and the series the most have some sort of Christian background or knowledge, and they really enjoy kind of, finding those little nods to, perhaps a Christian story or a name in the Bible or, some sort of Bible passage. So I think that's really meaningful. And I write clean books. So people who, are looking for clean, reads, and it's fantasy and with the romance aspect.
I'm very interested in this. This isn't a question I planned on, folks, so I don't want to rock her with this. But
Okay.
When you say fantasy, I'm not sure that a lot of people understand the difference maybe between science fiction, fantasy, romantasy. Can you tell us a little bit about what that category means?
Sure. So fantasy, and you could even argue mine is like high fantasy because it takes place in a world that is not our world. It's a fictitious world. And it's a pre-industrial setting, sort of culture. So, that kind of distinguishes it from sci-fi. I mean, there's really not, any hard science in the book. And then also, I would say, well, I don't know, I can market my book as sort of romantasy from a Christian perspective because the romantic subplot is so prominent. And I like to tell people my book, Sacred Fire, has lots of fire, but no dragons.
Oh, that was the question. That was my question. Is like, are there dragons involved in this? Because I always think of the dragons, right?
Yeah, most of my fantastical elements are spiritual in nature.
Very cool.
Like I mentioned, the giftedness of the main character is sort of a peacemaker.
So for readers maybe that haven't tried fantasy before and don't like dragons, this might be a great little entrance into that genre that they might want to keep the book for themselves instead of give it away. So that would be fun.
I would hope so. I mean, I have a lot of readers that read widely and read in other genres, but they really relate to my book because, again, it's not, I don't have dragons and elves and dwarves and
or the Tolkien universe. That's
spiritual fantasy elements.
That's very cool. I don't think I've ever heard of a book like that, so that's really interesting to me. So speaking of giving books away, when you were younger or even recently, what's the best gift book you've ever received? Let's get to know you a little bit better as an author.
Yeah, so one that jumps out to me, and this is going back decades, but my mom gave me Anne of Green Gables when
Oh,
I was
yeah.
sick with the flu. As a I was probably upper elementary, middle school,
Mhm.
just home from school, miserable, and she went out and came back with that book, and I was just enthralled and
Aw,
read,
beautiful.
every Anne of Green Gables book I could get my hands
Right, you
on.
were hooked.
Yep, yep.
Then who taught you to read? What
I
was the
would say,
first book?
predominantly my mom,
Mhm.
taught me a lot. We enjoyed books in our household, and so she was probably definitely my first teacher in terms of reading.
Do you have a first book that you remember, what you first remember reading?
I remember we were big into Dr. Seuss. That's
Oh,
probably not the
yeah.
first book we read, but certainly Cat in the Hat and Green Eggs and Ham.
You're
Um,
right.
and the kind of funny thing was that after I got married, my husband and I, well, when I was pregnant with our first son, we were talking about, oh, we need to go buy all these books, and it turned out he was a huge Dr. Seuss fan as
That's
well, which we didn't
great.
even know until we were expecting our
Oh,
first
what
child.
what
So
a lovely little weird connection, right? That's
yes,
very cool.
right.
So, of books that you enjoy, do you have a favorite book of all time that you can read over and over and over again?
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple. I would say Pride and Prejudice, one of my all-time favorites for sure. I can reread that. I can watch the movie, especially the one with Keira Knightley. That's one of my favorites.
Oh, that's my favorite version too. Thank you,
Yeah,
Kristen.
so good. And then, I also love Lord of the Rings. I mean, I'm a huge Tolkien
Yes.
fan, being a
Yeah.
fantasy writer, a fantasy reader. I just love his writing, and just the world building that he did was just
Yes.
so incredible.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. It's nice to meet another Tolkien fan because it's one of a kind, really. It's epic in every sense
Definitely.
of the word. What book are you reading right now? What's on your nightstand or
Yeah, so I'm reading a book by Tara Grace right now. It's called is it Forest of Scarlet. It's the book one of her series, and she writes a lot of. She's a Christian writer, I'm pretty sure, I believe, and she writes a lot of fantasy, and it's clean, and it's just I'm enjoying it.
that's very cool. Now, when you sit down to write, where do you write? What's your attic or basement or desk? Where's your writing space?
Yeah, I typically write in this room that I'm sitting in right now, which is a little study kind of in the front of our house. The only downside is you get some road traffic and other noise, but so if I really have to focus deeply, I may have to go to, like, a library or something like that, but for the most part, I get my work done in this room.
Are you one of those people that can have noise or music around you, or do you have to have sort of the cone of silence? What's your
Yeah, I
preference?
kinda need the cone of silence. I will use music ahead of time, like, to kind of
Mhm.
get me in a certain frame of mind for writing,
Mhm.
but yeah, I can't write with especially lyrics, forget it.
Oh, for yeah, because 'cause you're singing along, right? That's just not
Mhm.
good.
Yep.
Do you have any routines or things that you do to prepare? You told us a little bit about the music. Are there any other little quirky routines or things that you
Yeah.
do to prepare?
I mean, I'm probably not a super quirky person by nature, but, um, yeah, I mean, I try to pray before I'm gonna sit down and
Mhm.
write. I have to confess I don't always remember, which is, I mean, here I'm writing Christian fantasy, I need to,
Give
start
yourself some
there.
grace on that, Karen. Give yourself some grace,
Yes,
right?
yes, right. Um, and then I kinda have a little beverage routine where I start out with, like, a latte, and then I move to decaf green tea, and then as the day goes on, I switch over to sparkling water,
Oh,
and, you know
that's great. You're a well-hydrated writer.
yeah, well, I would hope so. It's good for the brain, right?
it is good for the brain. You gotta keep things moving in there.
Yeah.
So, this is a question that wasn't on the list that I sent you, but I'm curious, what has given you sort of the greatest sense of satisfaction about what you've written in this particular book?
Yeah, I would say, when I get, really nice review from someone I have no idea. I got a great review from someone in Australia recently, and I was just so, I don't know. It really lifted my spirits because obviously I, right in America, I don't know anybody in Australia.
Mm.
And she was just so sweet. She was just kind of saying, I had been really down about what I had been reading. And, I just came across your book and just so enjoyed the characters and just the Christian aspect of it. And,
Wow.
that's kind of, I think as readers, it's so easy to get discouraged. And,
Mhm.
writing a book is one of the hardest things you can do. And then, you kind of then have to move on to the next one and whatnot. So I don't know, that's the thing that really lifts my spirits a lot.
That's wonderful because honestly, as authors, we are hoping that that we're making someone's day and that we're helping that shift their perspective or appreciate something or see something beautiful. And speaking of that, all of the gift away books, all 9 of them are conveying spiritual truths in them. They're all Christian books. What truth does your book center on or depict?
Yeah, so the sort of the arc for the main character Sarah, it's really I as I talked about kind of what the book's about. She had huge expectations going into the holy city. She thought it was the answer to her prayers. It turned out to be very different. So one of the big themes in the book is that we can't always see ahead, the road ahead, like how things are going to turn out. If what we think is going to happen will, it usually doesn't go that way. But that God will make a way for us. And that way we can't always see until we're sort of looking backwards, but it will be better and bigger and, just more so than we can ask or imagine. And
Oh,
that's, kind of how I've tried to take my character through this book.
that is beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Again, I want to encourage everyone to rush right out and buy Karen's book. If you can't wait to find out about this, you can buy it right away. You can go, is it available on Amazon, I'm assuming, or?
Yes, it's on Amazon. It's in ebook and paperback and hardbook. And if people want to buy print books, they can also find them on Barnes and Noble or have your
Wonderful.
local bookstore order it.
And do you have a website that you can tell us about?
I do. Yeah, it's KarenGrunst.com. And Grunst, I'll spell it because that's a sort of odd name. Grunst.
Okay, great. And if you order this and you love it, and we know that you will, be sure and enter. Again, it's right down below in the comments. And there are 9 winners that will win 1 ebook, and there's one blessed winner that's going to win 9 autographed paperback books. So we hope that you enter today and have a blessed Christmas. Karen, thank you again for joining us today, and we are so excited to invite all of you to enter the holiday gift away.
Thank you, Marlene.
You're welcome. Bye, everyone.